Hey everybody, welcome to EduMatch. So thank you so much for joining us. So tonight I'm super excited because we are going to be talking with one of the EduSnap 17 contributing authors. So we have here with us AJ Bianco. Welcome, AJ.
Hey, Sarah, thanks for having me tonight. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for being here. So glad to have you on here. So you're going to be talking about your chapter on the flipped classroom. So I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about AJ. If you don't already know him, get to know him because AJ is legit. So AJ is a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher in a one-on-one classroom at Harrington Park School in New Jersey. AJ is also an advocate for technology both in and out of the classroom, and he incorporates a variety of technology tools such as G Suite for Education, blended learning, and a flip model to enhance student learning within his classroom. AJ is an avid podcast listener and co-host of Podcast PD, which rocks. He is also a co-host of Coffee EDU in Bergen County, New Jersey. You can find AJ at a variety of ed camps and conferences throughout New Jersey and New York. AJ shares his passion for education, educational technology, and leadership through his blog posts, and we're going to get into where to find you on social media later, a little later on in the show. So once again, welcome, AJ.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. It's a lot of stuff for that. I don't even know what it sounds like.
Oh yeah, definitely an impressive bio there.
Thanks.
So yeah, always, it's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about you, like your background and who or what inspired you to go into education.
So what got me into education when I was a kid, I always saw myself as an elementary education person. I liked little kids. I loved playing little sports with them and coaching up these little kids. And I always knew I was going to be a teacher in some way. But I was inspired by my high school social studies teacher, Miss Pichardo. I'll never forget her name. And I had her 2 years in a row, and she was fantastic. And she was the reason that I wanted to become a social studies teacher. So I knew I wanted to teach, and I always thought I wanted elementary. I wanted the little guys, but then when I saw her and the passion that she brought to her classroom and the fun that we had in her classroom, that's when I flipped the switch for me, that I knew that secondary, middle school, high school social studies was in my future. So thank you, Miss Pichardo. I don't know where you are. I'd love to find you and connect with you, but I wish you're out there.
That is awesome. Thank you to Miss Pichardo for that, because your students are very, very lucky to have you. So in your chapter, you talk a lot about the flipped classroom. So how did you become interested in that topic?
So the flipped classroom is just something that I was really caught on Twitter, to be honest with you. I was looking for a new way to bring about content to my students, and I knew using videos was always successful. Even when we were students, we'd always sit back and watch that occasional movie with the worksheet and kind of fill it out as the movie was going on. So we knew the videos worked. And then when the articles came out about the flipped classroom and flipped lessons, that was just something I was like, this sounds really cool. And I started to look into it, and I started to get excited about the way content can be delivered to our students. So it wasn't just, here's a textbook, here's a worksheet. Now it's more interactive, and it becomes a place in our classroom where students can actually have more of a discussion about something. And I don't really believe in the idea of doing a lot of work at home. Excuse me. Doing work at home, to me, sometimes is a burden, but this was something quick and easy that students can really pick up whenever they were ready.
Yeah, totally. I feel you on that. I also did that for several years with my students, and I, it's a great practice that I wish that even more educators adopted. So that is awesome. So very excited that you wrote that chapter. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm excited we're going to talk about this, but there's a lot of things I want to share when it comes to using the flipped classroom.
Absolutely. So you said that you learned about the flipped classroom on Twitter. So being a connected educator, what has been your journey with that? And what are some things that you have learned along the way as you've been connecting with other educators?
So being a connected educator was never really a goal of mine. I guess when Twitter started getting big in like 2007, 8, 9, I was using it to follow sports. And I've shared this story before. If you're listening to me on any podcast that we've done, I used to follow my favorite sports teams, the Yankees, the Jets, the shows I would listen to. And then one day I was like, you know what? There's got to be more out here. So all of a sudden I just started looking up educational content. I started looking up topics that I was teaching. And I came into the first ed chat, and I was like, what is this? And I followed the hashtag, and I started connecting with these other people and seeing these amazing resources that were available. And in 2009, I really just put both feet in the water, jumped into Twitter, and started meeting people. And I went to my first ed camp, which was a social studies ed camp. And I met some amazing educators that still talk to this day, who've really helped me turn my career around. Because if it wasn't for Twitter, if it wasn't for the people that I've connected with, I don't know where I'd be right now. Like, I was in a place in education where I was like, this just isn't for me. This is not what I wanted to do. The state testing was coming down, and it wasn't what teaching was to me when I signed up. And then I meet these people on Twitter, and I get all these new resources and these new connections. It really, really got me into a happier place where I knew education was in a good spot. And it really brought me into a better world of teaching. And I hope my students would tell me that I've become a better teacher because of it.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to everything that you're saying right now. There's like this whole hidden side, that people don't even know about unless they take that leap and they connect. So totally hear you on that.
The problem is they don't know about it and they don't want to take that chance. And that's where the whole thing comes into play.
Yeah. So that's like a catch-22 right there. So they'll never know unless they go for it, right?
Got to jump in.
Definitely. So you are featured in the upcoming EduSnap 17. So your chapter is about the flipped classroom. So what can people expect to read in your chapter?
So if you're reading EduSnap 17, which we appreciate, I really appreciate you allowing me to be part of this, Sarah. I'm so honored. I read 16 and I was like, this is awesome. And I had to jump on the opportunity to do this. So to read, if you're going to read my chapter, and hopefully you will, if you're interested in the flipped classroom, this really goes through my journey, the highs, the lows, the problems I've faced, the challenges that I created for myself, the issues I had with student interaction at the start of it, and then where it's going to take me, hopefully, this year and next year with my students. There's a great story. I think my story is actually a pretty good story. It's my journey, so I'm going to be a little biased, but it's a really good story about the highs and lows of using a tool that I had no idea if it was going to work. So give it a read.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. Just, like you said, trying new things and, definitely learning. So absolutely. And it is an honor to have you in the book. So thank you for being part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So what have been some of your big takeaways when it comes to what you've learned about the flipped classroom?
So my biggest takeaway from the flipped classroom, I thought it was going to be this magical elixir that would cure all things in my classroom. I've learned that the flipped classroom isn't really for all my students. Like, I thought that using technology and using phones and iPads and all these videos and my voice on lessons would kind of get them more excited about what they're learning, but it really wasn't the cure-all. And that kind of, I didn't think it was going to be everything, but I thought that it would get them a little more excited. But it seemed that at the beginning, it was just more work for them. Logging into a computer or finding their phone or putting on headphones or doing something by themselves, it was a little more work than just a typical homework assignment. And I was surprised by that.
Definitely. I can imagine that. So you talked about, like, in your chapter, things that went well, things that didn't go so well. And so I thought that was really cool to have that balanced viewpoint, because a lot of times, people approach it like, oh yeah, it's perfect and everything, but you were very, very realistic with it. So so that's good, because it's just as important to know, like, potential pitfalls to, think of strategies to overcome them. So so what have been, like, a couple of these pitfalls, and what strategies did you find have to overcome those?
Well, like I said, some of the pitfalls, I think, were just the fact that technology is an issue sometimes. Sometimes our kids just don't want to be on the computer, or even their families don't want them on the computer or phones or any technology past a certain amount of time. Too much screen time has always been an issue. So really, I think for the pitfall for that was just having the families buy in and having them understand what the goal of this was, to have them understand that this wasn't me taking away from their classroom experience or giving them extra work. I think that having them understand exactly my end goal was to bring in more discussion and to have students collaborate more and work together in groups. It took them a while to see, like, what my classroom was looking like, that it wasn't a typical classroom and here's the rows, here's the workbooks, here's the questions. They had to understand that I was doing this because I still think it's going to benefit student learning. So when they started to see that these videos are actually me teaching a lesson or me giving them some kind of YouTube video from somebody else who's created a lesson, that it was actually something meaningful. And they started to see that it wasn't very long. It's only 3 to 5 minutes each video, that this is something that could be handled rather quickly. And it brought excitement the next day. So I think the parent buy-in and other teacher buy-in, I think that was one of the biggest challenges I had to overcome in the first part of this.
Yeah, because a lot of times they want to see teachers teach the same way that they were taught. So sometimes that mind shift is like the hardest part, right?
And they want immediate results. If it's not working tomorrow, then it's really not good. So especially for families who believe in that old school mentality, that if it wasn't working the next day, well, then it shouldn't be going on.
Right. Absolutely. So that makes sense. That makes sense. It would, definitely be that would be a major hurdle in a way, but glad to see that has been overcome, and it's been a successful practice in your classroom, and your students are really benefiting from it. So what advice would you have for educators just in general based on your experiences in the classroom?
So my advice, and this is a problem of mine. So like when I said, I first found about the flipped classroom, it took me almost a full year to actually implement the ideas that I started to see. I'm a gatherer in that sense, that I want the information and I want to know about it. So for a full year now, I've been trying to figure out personalized learning and learning menus. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but I like to gather the information. So when I started the flipped classroom, I was gathering and finding out more and more and more. And it took me the time to just say, you know what, just go with it. So I jumped in halfway through a year, and it worked in certain instances. So I think if you're looking to try the flipped classroom or any other new idea or concept in your classroom, you got to jump in. Find somebody that you can trust, find resources that you are comfortable with, and get going. And don't sit back and don't say, well, I'll start on a Monday or I'll start at the beginning of the next quarter. Just jump in. Try it out for one lesson. Try it out for a portion of a lesson. Whatever it is that you want to try, you have to be able to dive in. You have to be able to take those risks. You have to embrace failure, and you have to show your students that you took a chance. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, and it'll encourage them to do the same thing. So really, you got to go with it. I'm not just saying it out of my experience. It's just the way education is now. You have to jump in. You have to strike while the iron's hot.
That is the truth, because there's so many things that will come by in the meantime if we wait, to try to find a perfect time. There's so many other things that come by and, kind of derail us. So I love that piece of advice, just jumping in and getting started. Yeah, totally. So, all right, great. So this is just wonderful information, and I'm very excited about your chapter coming out. So before I ask you where we can find you online, just wanted to give a special shout out to Noah and to Rochelle, who are tuning in and interacting on the YouTube live page. So hey, EduMatchers in the house, good to see you all there. All right, so AJ, if you could tell us, if anybody wants to know more about you or what you do, then how can they find you online?
So there's a couple of ways you can find me. I'm always on Twitter at AJ Bianco. Bianco, spell the last name. Facebook, Instagram. I'm open. If you want to connect with me in any way, I like to share my educational passions. I love to share, personal stories. I feel like they're all interconnected. I tell my students that if they search for me on my Twitter account on AJ Bianco, then they're going to find education stuff. And same thing on Facebook, same thing on Instagram. Little pictures here of my family every now and then, but that's a good place to start. If you want to read a blog post here and there, you can go to my website. It's ajbianco.me. And of course, a special shout out to my podcast listeners. You can listen to us on Podcast PD. You'll hear me there, cracking jokes and doing voices and all that kind of stuff. So I'm all over the place if you're interested in finding me.
All right, sweet. So thank you again for taking the time today to chat with us and to get us hip to the flipped learning. So really appreciate that.
Sarah, thank you for having me, and thank you for this honor. It really is great, and I really appreciate it. And all the things that you do, I hope that you understand how appreciative that we are in the educational world because of the things that you do. You are all over the place, and you are kicking booty.
Well, thank you so much. And so are you. So are you. The same can definitely be said for you and everything that you do. And it was great seeing you at Ed Camp, New Jersey a
That was a
couple
great
weeks ago.
time. Absolutely. So much fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So hopefully the next time will be not in a year, but sooner than that. So
I like that. I like that. That sounds like a plan.
yeah, that is awesome. So just wanted to remind our viewers that this Sunday we are going to have quadruple the EduMatch goodness this summer, or this Sunday, I should say. Starting at 2:00, then we're going to hear from Stephanie Jacobs, who will be chatting with us about blogging, her chapter on blogging. 4:00, we're going to be chatting with Ray Wood. So she is another EduSnap 17 contributing author. And then at 6:00, we will have our return to Tweet and Talk. And we're going to be talking about the K-12 bridge with higher ed, so the K-16 bridge. And last but not least, at 7 p.m., we're going to have a special panel with Bunsey and people talking about how they use presentations in their classrooms. So definitely check that out. Can't wait to see y'all. Not the same bad time, but definitely the same bad channel. Sunday is going to be crazy. So can't wait to see you all then. So thanks, and everyone have a great, great evening.